question that's formulating in my mind is, can that pattern emerge on the bulb? This is a biologically significant odor, you know, and maybe there's some response without it coming to consciousness, and I'm not sure, you know, but I'm thinking, you know, in other words, can the brain react to it and it be a percept in our model? You know, I mean, clearly percepts don't have to come to consciousness. But there's so many, like they.
Look, I drove from home here and so many various things came into my vision that I was not consciously aware of.
What was your original question that you were posing?
But would those things that you were consciously aware of ignited patterns in portions of your cortex?
Sure, I would think so. That's what I was thinking.
Perhaps on a very small scale.
If they were locally,
Yeah,
rather than globally, that's.
I think maybe
That's the difference.
yeah, and I think
You don't get this wave packet.
I mean, binocular rivalry. You have activation that corresponds to the non.
The stimulus is exactly the same.
Yeah. The stimulus is the same, and you have some activity that's predictive. It may not be identical activity, but when there's a conscious. Well, it's not, because of the Doesberg paper says so. But there is something going on in the brain in response to that. You know.
Was your original question in terms of what would happen in LIDA or what would happen in the brain? I mean, what was the original question?
About mapping, about comparing the two.
Okay, so when we answered the question a second ago in terms of the cortex, whether there's activity in the cortex, were you trying to answer a question in terms of whether a percept will be put into the workspace in addition to that? Or well, I'm trying to figure out what the original question was that we were answering.
Do you have a... I'm not quite sure. I'd maybe have to go back to hear the exact original question. But the idea was that in relating Freeman's neurodynamics to LIDA, you know, in the cognitive cycle, we have sensation and percepts being built prolifically in the workspace.
Right.
And Freeman is seeing these amplitude modulation patterns that only emerge if the animal responds.
Right.
Which suggests that there was some sort of presence that it had in the global broadcast, and it resulted in some sort of action selection.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
And so my question was, if we have a perceived something, can something be perceived in our model? Things can be perceived.
And what's the definition that we're talking about? Does that mean come to consciousness or have a percept go into the workspace?
In our model, it means a percept goes into the workspace. That's what when in the context of our model.
So it's not conscious perception, it's just perceived, meaning recognized by Pam.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about.
Okay.
So when that happens,
Well, it wouldn't even have to be recognized by Pam to be perceived. You can perceive something new that has never made it into Pam.
and what
Okay.
Stan suggested is that in such a case, there might be some pattern in the brain that's representative of the stimulus that's going to get ignored.
Mm-hmm.
It just is not going to light up into a global pattern the way
that makes
the
sense.
other one was.
In fact, there've been any number of studies that have shown that there really are such things.
Yeah. So like for instance, Freeman's data wouldn't allow us to tell. Like for instance, let's say the animal was given a lot of stimuli that it wasn't that interested in.
Yeah.
But then later it had some task where it had to kind of select things based on whether it had recently smelt that smell,
Mm-hmm.
And would it perform, you know, so maybe the smell could have gotten into some part of the brain, even though it didn't light up the cortex, the olfactory
Right.
cortex.
And that goes back to some of the conversation we had earlier. We have a particular section of the cortex that we're monitoring it, you know, for this activity, right? And we see that for this particular section of the cortex, if the animal doesn't appear to care about something, the amplitude of that wave pattern is less. But that's just a small part of the cortex. Who knows what the hell's happening everywhere else? You know, it's just
Right.
yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And that there could be more to it than in Freeman's model, but I think it's a good start. Is that a hiccup? That is a cute hiccup.
There's all kinds of cute sounds that she makes randomly through the day.
Shall we?
Yeah, it's a good one.
The end. It continues.
I was waiting to hear Ming the Merciless laughing there.
Yes.
I forgot.
Yeah, at the end of Flash Gordon. Ding! Did that the rings? And then he's like, ha, ha, ha.
Is that the end of Flash Gordon?
Yeah, the end and then question mark. Ha, ha, ha.
Oh, I forgot that. Now I've got to tie that in. Okay, thank you everyone. Would you please stop the camera?
Well, I'll try. Go for a bit.
And happy birthday again, Stan.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, yes, it's tomorrow,
The
Monday.
after party, yes.
Monday.
Do you have big plans?
No.